It's official. The Fed wants nothing to do with a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but they might not have a say in it. Welcome back, everyone. That's right. At the time of this recording, Bitcoin is slightly below or hovering around the 100K mark ever since the remarks made by the Fed Reserve's Jerome Powell. That's right. The overall market is focused on this 25-point basis cut and the possibility of less cuts than previously expected in 2025. But many Bitcoin hodlers are focused on Jerome Powell's comments directed at the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Let's take a look at Jerome Powell's comments here when asked specifically about the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Here we go.
So, we're not allowed to own Bitcoin. The Federal Reserve Act says what we can own, and we're not looking for a law change. That's the kind of thing for Congress to consider, but we are not looking for a law change at the Fed.
Now, although Jerome Powell said the Fed is not allowed to own Bitcoin, I think that this is where we can extrapolate information out, because he then says this is a matter for Congress to consider. So that tells us that the Fed actually may have no say at all, okay, in terms of what the U.S. Treasury does. Now, of course, somebody will be like, well, Phil, come on. We all know that the Fed and the Treasury, it's like essentially it's a revolving door between these two quote unquote businesses. But the point is that I believe we were given a hint as to how the strategic Bitcoin reserve can happen. And if we take a closer look at Congress, there's apparently over 250 candidates, right, who are considered to support the digital asset sector, okay, or they are in line with the initiatives of using and getting to understand Bitcoin. So, could it be Congress that decides whether there is a strategic Bitcoin reserve? It kind of sounds like it. We should also take a look at the narratives and what the perception is like, because I've heard a few different things. I've heard that a strategic Bitcoin reserve would possibly weaken the US dollar, right? Because essentially what it may signal to the rest of the world is that, hey, our dollar isn't strong enough, therefore we need Bitcoin to shore it up. Okay, I mean, I can understand that, right? This is perception. Another version of this is that actually the SBR, or the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, would strengthen the perception of the US dollar, right? And that would come from the angle of seeing that US lawmakers have accepted that there is an unreasonable amount of debt, which most likely can never be paid back, and that establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve could possibly be a way of creating a more positive perception and essentially creating the perception of a more responsible, fiscally responsible government. The third part of it is this. What is the likelihood that Congress would support a strategic Bitcoin reserve? Well, as I just showed you, supposedly there's around 250 candidates that are quote unquote pro digital assets, whatever that means. But that would indicate that these people are more than likely open to that discussion and what it entails. Now, the elephant in the room is probably the whole idea of why are Bitcoin supporters championing or cheering state adoption? Because obviously that the states, in terms of at least the majority of Bitcoiners' eyes, and myself as well, right, that the state is not necessarily there for our best interest. So, we shouldn't necessarily be cheering this on. And I can't disagree with that. The other thing is this, right? Is this not Bitcoin's game theory playing out in real time? At some point, we need to figure out, okay, when we say Bitcoin is the money of enemies, are we talking about the enemies that only I approve of, or are we talking about the general objective sense of enemies, which means anybody, right? Anybody. Anyone that wants to use it, that has the resources to use it, can use it. And those people, those groups, those organizations may not be in line with your beliefs. So if we are indeed freedom maximalists, right, then the enemies that are going to use Bitcoin, so to speak, they're not going to be people you approve of, right? It's not just the enemies that I approve of. It's everyone. So as much as I don't want the state, quote unquote, to adopt Bitcoin, I don't think I can stop it, right? And I don't even think it matters. I just think it's the game theory playing out. The last thing I'll say about the strategic Bitcoin reserve is this. I've only seen a handful, and I think I'm even exaggerating that. To my knowledge, it's only El Salvador that actually purchases Bitcoin. To my knowledge, every other government has seized Bitcoin from localized corporations and individuals. So I'm really not that confident, right, that any major government, any government that doesn't have a like an incredible capability to exert violence and control over its population, I just don't see why they would actually be buying it. And to date, the U.S. government hasn't purchased a single penny of Bitcoin, right? They haven't exchanged any fiat for Bitcoin. And the other piece of it is this, right? Maybe this is an accelerationist point of view, but wouldn't the government just simply print more dollars in order to buy the Bitcoin, which would then probably be a virtuous cycle of causing the Bitcoin, the perceived Bitcoin purchasing power to continue to rise because they're printing more money to buy more Bitcoin. So I don't know. It's not about being for or against state adoption. I believe it's just a matter of trying to look at it as objectively as possible and realizing that, like, you know what, this is just the game theory of Bitcoin playing out. Anyways, guys, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I will catch you on the next one.